In this lesson, we're going to take a look at place value and rounding decimals, and this is standard 5, NBT 4. We're going to be looking at this worksheet. You can go to worksheetsandwalkthroughs.com to print out a copy of this if you'd like. Pause the video, print out, and come right back. Then continue the video. The first 4, we're looking at rounding decimals to the nearest tenth. And the last 4, we're looking at rounding decimals to the nearest hundredth. So let's begin. We've got number 1. And sometimes when you're rounding numbers or decimals, or whole numbers, the easiest way to look at it sometimes is to put it on a number line. So that's what we're going to do with this decimal. We've got 457 thousandths. And we want to round to the nearest tenth. So let's underline that. That's our job, our math job. We're going to round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so we have to identify the tenth in this number. We've got a 4 in the tenths place, 5 in the hundredths place, and a 7 in the thousandths place. So we're going to take a look at that 4 in the tenths place. And automatically, you can think to yourself, okay, this 4 in the tenths place, we're rounding to the nearest tenth. So this decimal, 457 thousandths, is going to be between 4 tenths and 5 tenths. We're going to try to figure out which one this decimal is nearest to or closest to. And when you think about halfway between, you're always thinking about right in the middle there. So I'm thinking to myself, well, that would be about 45 hundredths. That would be about halfway between. Now, 457 thousandths is awfully close to 45 hundredths, or you could even think of it as 450 thousandths. That would be equivalent. So I'm looking at 457, and it probably would be right in here. So that would be 457 thousandths. And you could think of it as really 0.41. Write that a little clearer for you. 0.41 or 41 hundredths, 42 hundredths, 43 hundredths, and 44 hundredths. Right smack in the middle there. Let's make it a different color so it kind of stands out. Halfway between, we've got 45 hundredths, and we would continue. We'd have 46 hundredths, 0.47. And you can see how there's a pattern here. It really goes up by 1 each time, 100th really. And that would be 0.49 or 49 hundredths. Now, like I said before, that 457 thousandths is right here. And you could look right up there. It's right in there someplace. So you can see it's a bit closer to 5 tenths. So it would round to 5 tenths. That makes sense. So this 457 thousandths rounds to 5 tenths. You could also look at this the traditional way. Some people use that method. This is the number line method, and that might really make it easier for you to see. I mean, if it's right in here, anything to halfway point or more, you would round up the number line to the next highest amount. In this case, it's the next highest tenth. It's closer, or it's nearest to this tenth, 5 tenths. So it would be right there again on that number line. 457 thousandths, right there, right after 450 thousandths or 45 hundredths. Now the traditional method really tells us to, let me just move this out of the way here. The traditional method tells us that we, again, are looking at the tenths place, so we underline that, and then you draw an arrow to the right, so you're looking at the hundredths place, or the next smallest place to the right there, to tell us if we're going to round up or round down. In that case, the digit 4, look at that, that's the underlined digit, okay, it's the nearest tenth, it's the tenths place right there, so that's really what we're dealing with. It's going to either stay the same or bump up by 1. So in this case, the 5 right there, the 5 tells us that we need to bump it up the number line. Because if it's 5 or greater, we're going to bump up to the next nearest tenth. Okay, so what happens here is the 4 bumps up by 1 and it rounds up to 5/10. And all this would become 0, okay? Everything to the right, including that where that arrow is pointing to and to the right, becomes 0. So that's kind of like the dividing line. Everything after that when you're rounding turns to 0. And this either bumps up or stays the same. In this case, it's 5 or greater, so it's closer or nearest to that tenth right there. So 457 thousandths using the traditional method would round to 5/10. And if you wanted to think about those zeros being there, it would be like 500 thousandths. But since we're rounding to the nearest tenth, we'll leave it just like that, 5/10. All right. Let's take a look at the next one. Number 2, we've got 29 hundredths, and again, the directions were telling us to round to the nearest tenth, so we know automatically that this is going to either stay the same or bump up by 1. So we've got 29 hundredths is between 2 tenths. See that 2 in the tenths place? It's between 2 tenths, and 3 tenths. So it's somewhere in here. And I always like to think of, well, I know where that middle line would be. It would be 0.25. Okay, why 5? Well, if you're thinking about just straight old numbers from plain digits from 0 to 10, 5 would be halfway. So when you're numbering these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10 would include that 0.3. Whoops. So again, you could number these. You could go, okay, that would be 21 hundredths, 22, and so on, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and therefore, I'll move this over just a little bit. Therefore, 0.29 or 29 hundredths, because that's what we're originally dealing with, that decimal, would be located over here. And take a minute to think about that. We've got this original decimal we were dealing with. Is it nearest to, because remember we're rounding to the nearest tenth, is it nearest to this tenth, which is 3 tenths, or is it nearest to 2 tenths? Well, clearly you can see that it's closer to 3 tenths. So we can easily say that 29 hundredths rounds to 3 tenths. If you wanted to handle that with the traditional method, that'd be fine too. So the arrow we draw to the next place to the right. Remember, rounding to the nearest tenth, so the next place to the right would be 9. And the 9, since it's 5 or greater, we round that up by 1. We bump it up by 1. We add 1 more tenth to it, and that would make it 2 plus 1 would be 3 tenths. And everything to the right of that, the arrow or the dividing line there, you can imagine the dividing line, everything to the right would be 0, and everything to the left would either bump up or stay the same. In this case, it's 9, it's greater than 5, much closer to the next tenth up there. So there's that 9, much closer to that tenth. It bumps up to the next tenth, so it would be 3 tenths. All right, let's move along now. try to pick up the pace a little bit. If you want to pause the video, feel free to do that. Um, except for this the next example, we're going to take a look at, okay. We're going to also look at like a pictorial representation or a visual representation of this one as well. So let's do the number line method first. Okay, we can see that we're rounding to the nearest tenth. So this is the area that will either bump up or stay the same. So 705 thousandths is between this tenth. So we have a 7 in the tenths place, 7/10, or 8/10. So again, we've got our midway point would be here, and look at that. We've got, if we had, this would be about 71 hundredths, 72, 73, 74 hundredths. So I'm going to write that right in, 71 hundredths. And you can see that there's a 0 there, so 705 thousandths would be in here between these. And it's 0, like, that would be right halfway between here. And we'll kind of mark that out. Let's use a different color here so it kind of stands out for us. It'd be right in here. Switch to my different pen. Okay, it would be right about here, 705 thousandths. And clearly you can see it's much closer to 7/10. So we can go ahead and say that. 705 thousandths rounds to 7/10 over here. 7/10, and there it is, because we're rounding to the nearest tenth. It is definitely nearest to 7/10, much farther away from 8/10. Okay, let's try to make this decimal. It was 705 thousandths. So we've got, there's 100,000. If you look at these little ones, I mean, if you really need to brush up on this, you can check out the video making sense of decimals to the thousandths. I'll kind of give you an idea what we're talking about. But this really shows 100 thousandths. If you counted these little boxes, it would be equal up to 100 shaded blue boxes. So there's 100. And let's kind of represent that number down there. We have 700 1 thousandths. Okay, let's take a look at that. Oh, look at that. That bumped up on us. I think it was 705 thousandths. Oh, it was. Okay. So sorry about that. My mistake. We all make mistakes. It's okay. That's how we learn. So let's take a look at rewriting that the correct way. So this is 705 thousandths. We want to build it up, so we're going to have 7/10. You could look at it, or 7. Whoops. All right, so there's, or you could look at it as 100 thousandths. So there's 400 thousandths or 4/10, 500 thousandths or 5/10, 600 thousandths, 700 thousandths, and then we have 5 leftover thousandths. Okay, now you take a look at this, and since we're rounding to the nearest tenth, you can clearly see that, are we closer to shading in, let's see, we've got 7 fully shaded in tenths, or are we closer to having 8 fully shaded tenths? Well, clearly, we're only 5 hundredths over the 700 mark, so we would clearly have to round back to 700 thousandths, which is really, like I said, 7/10. So you could clearly see that we would round visually. It's much closer to having 7/10 or 700 thousandths than it is to having 8 or 800 thousandths or 8/10. Okay, now let's move on. Let's look at solving problem number 4. Okay, I'll get rid of our, okay, I'll bounce this up and there we go. Okay, number 4, decimal number 4 is 95 hundredths. And again, we'll kind of move along a little bit more quickly. And we're looking at rounding to the nearest tenth. There's a 9 in the tenths place. There's a 5 in the hundredths place. So it's really between 9 tenths and 10 tenths. Well, you can't really write 10 tenths. I mean, it's so you have to really trade up. And, well, really a good way to show this would be if you had to add 9 tenths plus 1 tenth, because we're looking at between which 2 tenths this is located. And we're counting order 9 tenths. What would come next? 10 tenths, absolutely. But we can't really represent that in our place value system. So when we're adding decimals, we line up the decimals and put a decimal in our sum there as well, our decimal point. We have 9 plus 1. You're probably thinking, that's 10. You'd be exactly right. And then you have to regroup and put that 1 up there. It drops down into the ones place. So that's what we have here. That's kind of the tricky part, but since you can look at it on a number line, it really makes it easier to see what we're talking about. I'm trying to move this, but not moving for me. That's all right. We can work around it. All right, we've got 95 hundredths, and the 5 tells us that it is really kind of right smack in the middle between 9 tenths and 1 whole, or 10 tenths. So what we do in these cases, if it's, like I said, if it's 5 or more, the rule in rounding is that you round up. So we're going to round up to this value, this tenth right here. So 95 hundredths rounds to 1 whole, or 1.0, which is equal to 10 tenths, isn't it? And you can clearly see that, I mean, that our rule is 5 or greater, round up, and there it is. Okay, the place to the right is 5 or greater, you round up. This stays the same or bumps up. In this case, it bumps up by 1, and everything else behind it becomes 0. So that the place that the arrow is pointing to, or the place to the right, and everything to the right becomes 0. And there we have it. All right, let's take a look at rounding to the nearest thousandth. So that's number 5, and we have the decimal 57 thousandths, and we need to round this to the nearest. Oh, we're rounding to the nearest hundredth. If I said thousandths, that was my mistake. Let's move on. Okay, we've got 5 hundredths here, and we're rounding to the nearest hundredth. Nearest hundredths. We've got to figure out which one it's closest to on the number line. So we've got, since we're dealing with hundredths, we've got to really put 0 in the tenths place and 5 hundredths, because that's what we're dealing with over here. Now it's slightly different because we have a digit to the left that we're dealing with, and you'll find out when you're rounding, it's either going to, this digit will bump up by 1, or we'll add 1 to it, or it stays the same, and everything to the left would stay the same in that case. And in most cases, everything else stays the same even when you bump up or round up. But if there was a 9, there are special cases, and we'll probably have one of those coming up. So let's take a look at this. So like I said, we're rounding to the nearest hundredth. The arrow to the right tells us, okay, the 7 is going to tell us where we are on the number line, and we're between 5 hundredths, and we're just counting off hundredths. Let me just put that in the same ink, the same color. This is between 5 hundredths and 6 hundredths, and we write that this way. 0 tenths, 6 hundredths, so it's 6 hundredths. We have to figure out where it would be. So like when we were doing the tenths, the dividing line here, let's see, this would be 0.055. Okay, 5 indicates you're halfway across. So 55 hundredths Again, if you want to write those in, if that helps you, you can do that. These should be equally spaced, but since it's a math drawing, you can kind of change that. I mean, just estimate it. So we've got, that would be 0, 5, 1, 0, 5, 2, 5, 3, 5, 4, 5, 5, 5, 6, and 0, 5, 7, or 557 thousandths. Oh, look at that. I made another mistake. It's okay. Fix that. I meant to write, and you'd have 57 thousandths, and that's the decimal we began with. So you've got that one, 57 thousandths, and it would be on the number line right about there. And you can clearly see visually that it's much closer to this hundredth. Okay, so we would round it up to 600ths, and that's what we're going to do. The 7 also tells us that. We could say it's greater than 5, so we round up. So this bumps up by 1. Oops. Bumps up by 1. So 5 plus 1 would be 6, and that would be 600ths. So that number rounds to, so 57 thousandths rounds to 600ths, because we're rounding to the nearest hundredth. It is much closer. It is much closer to this. Okay, it's nearest to that hundredth. Okay, let's move on. The next one, we have 392 thousandths. So it's going to be, we're rounding to the nearest hundredth. So we're looking at, it's between 39 hundredths and you could say 4 tenths, or really 40 hundredths, because we're dealing with the nearest hundredth in this case. That's what the directions told us to do. So we'll put an arrow to the right here. The 2 tells us approximately where we are on here. Again, 5 would be in the center. We'd have 1, 2, so 392 thousandths would be right around there. And you can see that the 2 tells us to round down. Also visually you can see that 392 thousandths is closer to 39 hundredths. So that one rounds to 39 hundredths. And we did round to the nearest hundredth, so that works. If you ever want to try these by yourself, just go ahead, try them by yourself, and then when you're ready to check your answers, then you can resume the video. Check your work. That'll work for you. All right. All right, so now we have 97 hundredths. That's question number 7 was 97 hundredths. We have to round to the nearest hundredth. So there's a 9 there. So we're really looking at 97 hundredths is between 97 thousandths, I mean, is between 9 hundredths and, well, there we go again, 10 hundredths. It would look like that. It looks an awful lot like 1/10, doesn't it? If you were thinking that, you're right. It is. So we've got this 7 over here to the right, an arrow to the right tells you that the 7 tells us, well, it's greater than 5, so we must round up, and that makes sense because halfway between there would be 0.095, 95 hundredths. Like I told you, that 5 really tells us the halfway point, and in this case it's 0.96, 0.97, 97 hundredths. And you can clearly see that it is indeed closer to closer to 10 hundredths or 1/10. So in that case, and since we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, we can write 97 hundredths rounds to 10 hundredths, and really it is equal to 1/10. Now we'll do the last one, question number 8. You're probably getting pretty good at this. Good for you. Bump up this problem a little bit. Visually, it's less distracting. Okay, so now we've got 231 thousandths. That's what we're dealing with. And we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, the tenths, the hundredths, the thousandths place, rounding to the nearest hundredth. So we're looking at 231 thousandths is between 23. See, I'm just rewriting that there, this 23 part. It's between 23 hundredths, and we're dealing with rounding to the nearest hundredth, and 24 hundredths. That makes sense, doesn't it? 23 hundredths. What comes next? 24 hundredths on the number line. And in between that, we have the thousandths. So we've got halfway between. If I can move this down, I'm not sure if I can. It doesn't look like I'll be able to. Okay, that's all right. So we've got, maybe I can move this up. Ah, that works. Okay, once again, it's between 23 hundredths, 24 hundredths, halfway between. You're probably getting the hang of this. We go, that would be 23, oh, actually, 235 thousandths. We see how we put on that, tacked on that 5 to represent halfway between. And now we've got, this would be like 230 thousandths, and this would, next one increment would be 231 thousandths, and there it is. That's the decimal we began with. And if you're looking at the traditional method, that arrow tells you it's, well, it's less than a 5, so we're going to round down to the nearest, the lower hundredth. So then you can see it is. I mean, this distance here between 23 hundredths and 231 thousandths is much shorter than the distance between 231 thousandths and the next 10 up, or 100th up would be 24 hundredths. That makes sense. So there it is. This one, 231 thousandths, rounds to 23 hundredths. And there you have it. There's a quick look at rounding decimals. Thank you very much for checking out worksheets and walkthroughs.com, and we will see you again next time.